welcome to the channel, guys. So here we have the new 2024 GR Yaris Gen 2 Mark II, whatever you want to call it. In this video is going to be my full detailed review. We've now done nearly 1,000 miles in the car. I've owned it for a month, taken it on many of my favourite roads, and I'm going to talk in this video basically how does the Gen 2 compare to the Mark 1. I owned a Mark 1 for 3 years and did 20,000 miles, so I think I'm pretty well qualified to compare the two vehicles. So in this video I'm going to tell you how the two compare and where the Gen 2 really shines. So stay tuned and keep on watching. I am going to go and grab the camera and I'm going to become behind the camera because that'll probably be better for sound for all of you guys so that you can hear me properly. So I'm going to come and get the camera now, and it's going to become more of a point of view, me walking around the car, detailing what makes the Gen 2 really that much better than the Gen 1. And let me tell you now, the Gen 2 wipes the floor with the Gen 1 in some very important areas. So let's crack on with the video. Well, thank you for staying tuned in. So I'm now behind the camera as promised. I'm now going to do a quick walk around of the Gen 2 GR Yaris, just show you all around it, and then we're going to get into it where the Gen 2 really excels over the Gen 1. It's a really important area for me where the Gen 2 really shines. But anyway, I'm just going to, you can see the car from quite high up. So yeah, it's a 2024 Gen 2 GR Yaris, or Mark II, or GR-Four Yaris, or Yaris GR, depending on which region you're from. Different people call it different things. That my gimbal is determined to lock onto the Alpine. There we go. So yeah, let's get into this review, shall we? So I've done loads of videos on the dash. If anybody, let's forget about the dash for now. I personally love it. I think it's a massive upgrade over the Gen 1, but I've really done the dash in massive detail in other videos, so please go and watch those videos. So the Gen 1, let's start the video. Let's be brutally honest. The Gen 1, I owned the car for 3 years. I thought it was a great car, but I never fell in love with it. The main reason I kept the car for as long as I did was because Bryony, my partner, she absolutely loved the car. So that was the reason it stayed on the drive as long as it did, mainly. But I never particularly fell in love with the Gen 1. I thought it was a great car, but for me, my main reasons for disliking it was I felt the steering was numb. I didn't feel it had very good steering, and the car, they're very capable, always didn't feel locked down, if that makes any sense. I mean, I love rear-wheel drive cars, and I love getting a rear-wheel drive car sideways on a roundabout. The Gen 1 Yaris, for me, always felt a little bit floaty at higher speeds. Could have been more confident inspiring, as a way to speak about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, nothing can really leave one of these cars on a B road, whether it's a Gen 1 or a Gen 2. They are both immensely capable, and what I don't want to come across on this video is that I'm slamming the Gen 1 in any way, because I'm not. The Gen 1 is a great car. Me personally, I think that I would probably rate, if I was to give the Gen 1 a score out of 10, I would probably rate the Gen 1 at like an 8 to an 8.5 out of 10. If I was to rate this Gen 2 out of 10, for the kind of car it is, a hot hatch, it's a 10 out of 10. So I'm going to get straight into it. What for me, the biggest improvement on this Gen 2 Yaris is the steering. There is such a remarkable improvement in steering feel. I am actually shocked at just how they've improved the steering. Now, you do actually have to put the car in sport mode or custom mode, and in custom mode, make sure you have the steering set to sport steering. And I'm not talking about here the weighting of the steering, etc. The weighting and the turning response and the general response is absolutely spot on anyway. That's fine, and that was all fine in the Gen 1 as well. What I'm talking about here is the feel you're getting in your hands, the texture from the road. The Gen 2 has a remarkable, massive improvement in the feedback coming through the steering wheel. It is, for me, it's night and day. It is a huge improvement, absolutely huge. I can't get over what they have done to improve the car the way they've done on the steering. I don't know what they've done. Obviously, we know there's a lot more spot welds in the chassis, which might be helping. We know they've put higher spring rate springs in, which of course may be helping. But I think they've obviously, because it's an electronic rack, it's an E-Pass, they've probably spent many hours, days researching and improving the software to improve the feel of the rack. I drive this car now, and don't get me wrong, in the old Gen 1 I was confident to, let's say, do some pretty crazy things. You know, these cars are crazy capable. But now, for me, what I disliked about the Gen 1, there's nothing I dislike about the Gen 2, apart from maybe the lack of engine noise. You know, nothing's changed there. It still sounds pretty bad. There is either no fake noise anymore, or it is far less pronounced. The noise in the cabin now feels far more real, doesn't feel synthetic anymore. I actually really liked the noise in the Gen 1, the fake noise in the cabin. I actually enjoyed it. I know a lot of people hated it and seek to turn it off. And I feel in the Gen 2, they have done exactly that they've either turned it off or they've turned it way down. So those of you that hated the fake sound, you probably really like the Gen 2. But for me, I'm just going to cover it once more. The steering feel is a massive improvement. There's so much more feel, texture, the granular where the grip is. Just so much more coming through the steering wheel. So much more. And I'm going to apologise about the weather. I know I can't. We're in the UK. It's been very gloomy. If it does start raining, I promise to stick with it and to keep on going. So yeah, the steering feel, for me, it's night and day. Massive improvement. Right, moving on. Can I feel the extra 20 horsepower in the car that it supposedly has? No, that's not night and day. That's not like the steering. It's marginal at best. I would say the car seems to definitely has better response to light throttle and in the mid-range. But when you're, because obviously now we're running, I can go full throttle and rev all the way to the rev limiter. The car is eager, but I wouldn't say I can really feel it. The numbers on the speedo do seem to build a little quicker. That's all I could say. But as to can I feel it, is it a much quicker car? I can't really feel it. I think it's a little bit quicker, but it is what it is. So performance wise, it's here or there. Steering, massive improvement. Now the other big improvement is how locked down this car feels. I've had Evos and driven many Subarus in the past, and what I loved about my Evos, you always felt that they were literally clawing the tarmac apart. It was almost like you had claws for tyres. My Evo always felt like it was literally ripping the tarmac apart to find grip at any possibility it could find grip. Whereas in the Gen 1 had a sensation of that. At times it also had a sensation of floating across the surface of the road, a little bit tiptoey. Now all of this could also be attributed to the lower seating position and the fact that the dash is much lower. But I think a combination of better spring rates, I don't think the dampers are any different, but obviously there's a lot more spot welds in the car. Toyota have maybe made tweaks that they've not divulged, but the car is a lot more locked down. You can carry you can carry big speeds before. What I don't want to make out is that this car can go around a corner 20 mile an hour faster. No, it can't. There's probably not much, back to back, both cars are probably more or less as capable as each other. But how I feel sat in the driver's seat of the Gen 2 is a remarkable improvement. The car feels much more locked down, way more stable through high-speed corners, and just far more willing to attack. I would happily bung the Gen 1 into a roundabout at some daft speeds and have all the tyres squealing, but it's even more pronounced in this car. It's even more enjoyable to do that kind of thing and more confident and inspiring. So for me, the biggest improvements in the Gen 2 is the steering feel and the way how it feels very confident, inspiring, and very locked down. But what that doesn't do, it doesn't make it boring at low speeds. You know, it still makes it a lot of fun to drive at any speed. It's not become like a Nissan GTR where you've got to go at crazy speed to enjoy the car. The car is still immense fun, and that at any speed, but it just feels a lot more locked down. The brakes, they haven't changed. The brakes are still the amazing brakes that they've always been on the GR Yaris. Never ever tailgate one of these cars, no matter what you're in. These things can stop so fast, it's untrue. And they stop so fast with zero fuss. You can literally slam the anchors on one of these and you're just gonna stop. You're not gonna be skidding, you're not gonna be out of control. You are just gonna stop in a very controlled fashion in an extremely amount of short distance. Never tailgate one of these cars or you will rear end it because it will outbrake you. I mean, look at the brakes on it. Got a lovely two-piece disc in the front, nice big calipers, and you've got, again, a similar setup in the rear. So yeah, the brakes, as they've always been, are amazing. Never ever tailgate one of these. You should never tailgate any car anyway, because it's just stupidity. Highway code stipulates all your braking distances and stuff, but this car will stop way quicker than many other cars. And if you're tailgating in something that hasn't got good brakes, then yeah, you're likely to cause an accident. But yeah, the brakes, the Gen 1 had amazing brakes, Gen 2's got amazing brakes. Not really any difference there. I couldn't tell you if they've changed the pedal feel, but for me, the way the brakes are set up are perfect. You can modulate them perfect. They have great sensation of feel. No negatives on the brakes, they are brilliant. Same tyres as before, Michelin PS4S, nothing's changed there. You've got the same wheels as before. Bear in mind that all Gen 2s are now circuit pack spec. So you've got the diffs either end, you've got the BBS beautiful wheels. Everything is as it is. So yeah, the driving experience is amazing. That's all I can say. You can see it's beading. That's the G-Technic 5-year ceramic coating doing its work. Some lovely beading going on there. I mean, I will be brutally honest. When I already had a buyer lined up for this car when I picked it up at decent overs. You know, I'll be brutally honest and tell you now, I had a buyer lined up, guaranteed at £48,000 to buy the car, and I had somebody else trying to offer me 50k for the car, but I'd already made an agreement. If I was to sell the car, it would have gone to the other gentleman at 48 grand. So no word of a lie, I was going to get the car, drive it for a week, do about 50 to 100 miles in it, and let the gentleman have it at the £48,000. The problem was I drove it and I was like, wow, what have they done? This is a lot more done to this car than what they let on. I say, for me, I never got on with Gen 1 because of the numb steering. That was my biggest complaint about the Gen 1, was the steering. And at times, it could have inspired better confidence. And I hated the seating position, I won't lie. I also disliked that too. And then I drove this and I was like, oh dear, oops. I had to let the gentleman know. I was like, look, you know, I'm going to keep the car. It's a lot better than I was expecting it to be. And he was like, yeah, okay, fair enough. I don't blame you. And so, yeah, here it is. It's still in our driveway. A month later, 1,000 miles in. It is a much better bit of kit. I'm going to get in the car now and start it up because I just want to show you some of the extra features that you get on the Gen 2. I'm not going to go in too much detail on the dash because I have several videos on my channel showing the dash and how to change all the different settings. So do feel free to go and view those. We're going to get in. As I say, as I highlighted in another video, is that they seem to have changed the carpets to potentially save weight. You don't get red stitching anymore, it's silver stitching, which we were a little gutted about. If we could have spec'd it how we like in the UK, we would have had red stitching and red seat belts. But you get what you get in the UK. All you can pick is a manual or auto and your colour. We went for the precious metal, which I think is a must on the Gen 2. Easily the best colour. It's a really nice grey. It's a bit darker than the BMW CSR grey. I hoovered the car up today and look what I forgot. I forgot to hoover the boot. Anyway, we have a smaller battery to save weight. It doesn't have stop start anymore, the Gen 2, no stop start, so no AGM battery, so they've probably saved about 5 kilos there. You got your IC spray, so you can cool the intercooler in the warmer months to keep you maintaining peak horsepower. As the boot's not changed, you just get a boot mat now, which is a very expensive boot mat. Same boot, get plenty in there if you need to. You got the beautiful light bar. In fact, let's go turn the car on and get the lights on. I'll show you the dash powering up. Like I say, there's lots of videos on the dash on the channel. I've disabled keyless entry, hence why I have to hold the key there. I don't like keyless entry, again that's explained on the channel. We'll put it in custom, and I like to press IMT and traction off, and that and track, and that's me, how I drive it. It literally takes me probably 2 seconds to press all the buttons that I want to set the car how I want. So I'm going to show you the IC. If you go down here, it's focused, you have this button here called IC spray. I'm going to press that and show you what it does. Can you hear that? That are sun, and they spray onto the radiator. There you go. That's the IC spray in action, and that will just keep running and spraying. You can hear it, which is cool. But if you leave it pressed, you literally empty the full tank in about 5 minutes. So I think that's a little bit of a flaw, but I suppose the tank, so you'll see, because I've not pressed it again, it's in auto now. There you go, and that will keep spraying. But we'll turn that off because, like I say, it empties the tank really fast. You got your new dash, which I think is a massive improvement on the old dash. I really love it. I love the fact that you can customize the display, so you can see here I've got that one. So if I press the revs, you'll see if I press the brake, you can see the various things going up and down. If I press left to right, I can change the displays to different ones I've got set, etc, etc. So that's the IC spray. You've got a glove box, same as the old one. Oh, one negative about this car that we've noticed, this new material on the dash is like very porous, and literally touching it like this marks it. You have to clean it because it almost pulls the oil and grease. I mean, my hands are spotless, but still, your fingerprints mark the dash. It's very porous, whereas the old car had what's on the door cards on the dash, if I remember right, which was more like this shiny leather, which touching it doesn't mark. So yeah, obviously, I mean, we'll show you what people mainly complain about the dash is this view. Obviously, when you're out here and you're looking at it like this, it looks like one of those old arcade games that you could buy, as your parents used to buy you as a kid. It's like those who remember, it was like the black and orange little box, and you had the push to go faster and the little steering wheel. Kind of reminds me of that, but it's very driver focused. And once you're in, you can see there we've averaged nearly 26 miles to the gallon since we picked the car up. I say, obviously, we've been doing a lot of running in. Fuel economy wise, it's not really any different to the Gen 1 car. If you're cruising at around 60 to 70 mile an hour, you'll easily see 35 to 40 miles to the gallon. If you pick up the cruising speed a bit more to, like, say 80, 85, then you're going to be 29 to 30 miles to the gallon in the Gen 2 manual, because that's why it does suffer, because obviously the turbo is starting to boost. I'm sure that the automatic is far better at cruising because it's got 8 gears. So I would imagine in 8, doing 80 mile an hour, you're still off boost. So yeah, I showed you the IC spray. I think it's more of a gimmick, if I'm totally honest. But I guess it's cool. Some people did do that mod on the Gen 1s. Oh, let me just show you there is a point of view video on the channel, which will show you with a GoPro strapped to my head, so you can see my driving position and view out perfectly. But I'm going to put this at my eye line, and this, there you can see the steering wheel. I'm going to do that. My seat is in the lowest position, and even now I sit about 25mm, 1 inch lower than in the Gen 1 car. I can still see more out because the dash is so much lower and your mirror is so much higher. So visibility is a vast improvement. The seats also feel a bit more hugging. I think the bolsters are a bit stronger than the Gen 1. So yeah, the lower seating position, very welcomed. Oh, we're gonna have it. Let's put the lights on. They should come on. Yeah, we're getting towed off. Obviously, I think that we got a price for this from Toyota. I'm not sure if you can retrofit it to a Gen 1, but the rear light bar, I think, is £1,600 plus VAT. So that could be coded and fitted to Gen 1. That could be a very popular modification for a lot of Gen 1 owners, is that rear light bar. Looks really cool. I always drive with your side lights on in a Gen 2 and show it off. Say the exhaust sounds no different. It doesn't sound any better. It is different, but it doesn't sound any better. And there's the LEDs from the front. Night driving in the car is just like the Gen 1. The LED lights are pretty decent on dip and full beam. We did a bit of a night drive literally a couple of nights ago, about 100 miles, and some nice country lanes in the pitch black, and I still felt confident to push the car. And you know, I'm not young anymore. I'm not in my teens or my early 20s. I have discovered that now I'm mid-40s that I have noticed that my vision has weakened a little, and particularly night vision. I don't have the best vision at night as I've got older. My night vision's not as good as it used to be. But in the MK2 Yaris and the Gen 1, no problem at night driving. I'm just trying to think if I've missed anything. I've covered that. Yeah, the dash material is annoying because it's very porous and marks very easily, especially even just by touching it. The seating position is much lower, which is very welcome. The actual dash itself is a big improvement. I really like it. The brakes are the same. You now get GR-Four on the intercooler. And I say we've done nearly 1,000 miles in the car. Owned the Gen 1 for 3 years and did 20,000 miles. But yeah, I think for me, and I think it's obviously one of the most important things in a car, is the steering. It's just such a big improvement in feel coming through the wheel compared to the Gen 1, which is definitely the reason why I've turned down the option of getting overs on the car and kept the car. I'm not saying we'll keep it, you know, forever, but for now, it's certainly staying on the driveway because didn't expect that kind of improvement. And how they've done it is unknown, but like I say, probably changes to the software for the e-pass and fine tuning. The fact the car is a lot more spot weld, etc. So, oh yeah, let's touch on ride quality. This firmer springs, it is a firmer ride, but the ride quality is actually as good, if not better. I don't think they have changed the dampers on the car, but the damping does feel improved. And that's so. And obviously I've taken this car now around the Peak District. We've taken it around Wales, which do have some really lumpy, bad roads. And obviously when the reviews came out, and let's just point out that the reviews that have been out are like people who get the car for a day and probably do 50 miles in the car, and half of that's on a race circuit. I would say that though it's firmer, it's damping somehow better, even if the dampers aren't changed. The overall quality of the ride is improved, and it doesn't get upset by really rough roads. Neither did the Gen 1. I'm not saying that Gen 1 did. It didn't. It was also amazing on those kind of roads. But the Gen 2 keeps that trait. It's extremely good on a bumpy, tight, technical, twisty B road. Very, very planted is the word to say. But with the improved steering feel and the bigger feeling of confidence and a more planted feeling in the car, I would say that now on your favourite B roads, the Gen 2 is an improvement for sure. I think where the Gen 2 will really step up the game, which is something I've not done, is on circuit. because the car does feel a lot flatter than it used to be. There is still a sensation of roll, but the roll is far less. The Gen 1 car rolled quite a bit, which I actually never minded, because you can tell what the car's doing when it's rolling. You know, it's a sensation of feedback. Whereas now the car remains much flatter. You still get the sensation of the car wanting to pivot and roll, but it's far less. So I think on a racetrack now, this new Gen 2 will be quite a bit more capable. And I'm sure it would be really good to see a professional driver on the same circuit on the same day take out a Gen 1 and a Gen 2. Same driver, same day, same conditions, same tyres, and that stock for stock, see how they compare. Because I wouldn't be surprised that the Gen 1's probably a couple of seconds a lap faster around most UK circuits. It just feels that much more, what's the word? Just like Toyota have really put that bit of extra effort into sort it. And you've got to give Toyota their due now. A lot of people made their complaints about the Gen 1. Everybody complained about the seating position, the notchy manual, and sometimes it having problems. And Toyota have taken all those complaints to heart, and they've really worked on it, because now the manual is only notchy in a really good way. I've never once had an issue trying to get any gear, not once. In fact, the gearbox is a marked improvement on the Gen 1. It's really, really nice. It feels a slightly shorter shift as well. I don't know if they've changed that, but it's got that very much like boom, 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 boom. It's really nice. So they've improved the manual gearbox. Definitely. We never had a problem actually with our Gen 1, but we know a lot of people did. But on the Gen 2, for us, the gearbox is much improved again. It's definitely, you couldn't make it any better. It's one of the best manuals currently on the market, absolutely. The steering is a massive improvement. The confidence inspiring from the car is an improvement. I would say negative is that you've lost the spotlights, which was for somebody like me that does struggle a little with night vision. I do miss having the spotlights to light up, you know, further to the other side of the car. So that's a negative for sure. Missing spotlights, bad dash material. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I could say is a negative on the car, but I can't really think of one apart from the price. You know, it's £45,000 now. But in fairness, inflation is due a big part of that price increase. And the other reason the price has probably gone up a lot, because of all the safety features that have been put in the car that none of us as motoring enthusiasts ever asked for. But all these extra things being pumped into these cars, like speed limiters and pre-collision systems, etc., etc., they're all extra, they all add weight, and they all add cost. So that's another reason why it's gone up. But at first, when I picked up the car, and before I'd really driven it, and I was like, is it worth, let's just forget inflation, just say, is it worth 10 grand more? On day one, I'd have said no. I was like, it's probably worth about 5 grand more. But I'd not driven the car in anger or really pushed it on any of my favourite roads at the time. Now I've driven the car in anger and driven it fully flat out on my favourite roads. It is absolutely worth the extra 10 grand. This thing is amazing. And I don't want to upset any Gen 1 owners, but stop going on about the dash. Go out and drive one and try to get an extended test driver one, and put your mind to the steering. Because for me, the way this Gen 2 drives is a big step on from the Gen 1. Toyota, give them massive respect. They've really, really improved the car. They have made a great car, a truly amazing, perfect car. They really have. There is for me, no better hot hatch on the market. Okay, there are some hot hatches that are quicker in straight lines, Golf R, etc., A45, AMG. If you want a total package of a car, and you don't need back doors, and you love attacking B roads, and just that great feeling, this is the car. As Ben Collins just put in a video he just put, and he reviewed the Gen 1, it is the new Lancia Delta Integrale. And that, I mean, I think I've covered everything now, but I just want to try to get across over the camera that I generally, this car was going to be sold pretty much within a week. I drove it, and it's so much better than the Gen 1 that it made me change my mind. I turned down the option of just making a quick £3,000 profit on this car by flipping it. I turned that down because I decided to do some driving in the car, and that was just when I was just driving it while I was running in. So that was like within the first 100 miles, I made that decision, and I wasn't really revving the car anything beyond like 3,500 RPM. Because as soon as I got to grips with the car, set the car up how I wanted to set it up, which for me is steering and sport, powertrain and normal, that just affects the throttle mapping. And I don't like throttle mapping where you're getting 80% throttle by just pressing the pedal down by 30%. I like a linear throttle feel, so I want to get 100% when I flood the throttle. I don't want to get 100% when I've only got the throttle down halfway. So I keep my throttle mapping normal, my steering in sport. I turn IMT on. I nearly missed something there. The IMT is an absolute massive improvement in this Gen 2. I hated it in the Gen 1. I just thought in the Gen 1 it was jerky. I had an M2 at the same time, which had a similar feature. And the M2 rev matching was perfect. And the Gen 1 Yaris turned it off all the time. I really disliked it. Thought it was rubbish. So I never used IMT in the Gen 1. IMT in the Gen 2, perfect. It seems very well judged. It's never a moment where I've changed gear, whatever, or changed down or down and on the brakes at the same time, and it's got it wrong. It is perfected now, the IMT. So they've massively improved that as well. But yeah, I could have made a quick $3,000. I drove the car and I was like, oh, it's such a big improvement compared to the Gen 1. And mainly for that, for me, is the steering. Obviously, as I was running in the car and carrying some higher speed through corners, you know, and you can still do that. You can be in 4th or 5th gear and be like revving at 3,000 or 4,000 RPM and still carrying quite a lot of speed. And that while I was running in, and I instantly could feel how much more planted this Gen 2 is and how much more confident this Baron is. It's just so much more sorted. I'm sorry if there's any drips coming on the lens. It is now starting to rain. I have gone on for quite a long time. But yeah, anybody who's thinking about one or can get one, get it. Because if you discover that you don't like it, you can probably sell it for what you paid with delivery mileage quite easily. But I guarantee you, if you're open-minded and you have a Gen 1 and you drive a Gen 2, you're going to agree with what I'm saying. The Gen 2 is quite a big step on in the way it drives, especially the steering and the confident inspiring. The manual is improved. The IMT is much better. The dash is so great. Really driver focused. Don't get me wrong, the old dash had really beautiful analog dials like an Aston Martin. I could maybe see the arguments for it, but it doesn't. The old dash was just cheap, basic dials. There's nothing, you know, amazing about those dials. I look at my old photos and videos on my phone and I think how that Gen 1 dash looks really, really rubbish compared to the Gen 2. And so yeah, I don't get a lot of the hate. I mean, but I think it's just a running joke really. So yeah, the Gen 2, I really don't think I've missed anything now. It is just a big step on. You know, it's what, 3 years, 4 years later, Toyota are bound to make improvements, and they have, and those improvements are really felt in the driving experience, and they're all extremely positive. There is no negative in the way this car drives compared to a Gen 1. No negative at all. The only thing that maybe ever so slightly is that maybe you had a slightly more sensation of speed in the Gen 1. Because for me, the Gen 1 also rattled more. The Gen 1 just, yeah, about like a cheap hot hatch in many ways. Don't know what they've done to this, and it doesn't make much sense because it's got the different carpet, which is not so nice. I guess that's a negative, but the car doesn't drone on the motorway. It doesn't rattle. It feels of a much higher build quality when you're cruising on the motorway. I never really liked cruising on the motorway in the Gen 1 Yaris. You kind of knew that you were in a cheap hot hatch in many a way. Whereas this one cruises far more like more of a high-end, not high-end, but more like BMW kind of quality. It's quiet, it doesn't drone, it doesn't rattle. It's really nice. The stereo is an improvement as well. I don't know if our cars have JBL, but when you set up the sound system and get in and do all the bass, etc., which is one of my other videos how to do that, the sound system is a marked improvement on the Gen 1. And of course you've got Android and Apple CarPlay now, and they're both wireless in the Gen 2, which is a nice thing to have. So yeah, So negative points is that you have a different carpet material, the dash marks easily, and there's some and the spotlights are gone. They are for me the only negatives, and for me those negatives are so minor they wouldn't even come into consideration for a split second. I've had to think about them in this video, which has now gone on for about 40 minutes. I've had to really think about what is the negative of the Gen 2 compared to the Gen 1. And it's just those three things. And I guess the big thing is, if you want to highlight it, is the price of it. But times have moved on. The Gen 1 wouldn't be 33 grand if it came out today. Inflation, cost of living, lada. So yeah, the Gen 2 is awesome. Go drive one if you can. If you've got the funds, buy one. For us, we went manual. The manual is an improvement over the Gen 1. They have made the manual definitely better, and the IMT works much better. So yeah, just trying to get across on camera really how good it is. And there's the other amazing little hot hatch sports car, the little Alpine A110, which is also awesome. I am going to do a separate video at some point comparing the two directly, but for now we'll just leave this video as you being able to see it. So yeah, Gen 2 Yaris, definitely an improvement on the Gen 1, massive in the steering, big and good improvement on the gearbox, definitely more confident, inspiring. Overall, just a much better car. You know, they've really done their homework, and they've listened to their customers, and they have massively improved the car. And I think it looks better. Love the precious metal paint. Love the rear light bar. I actually like the front end as well. Just annoyed that they stole my spotlights. But I think, I mean, you got cool. I love the side bits there on the front. Yeah, the new Gen 2 GR Yaris, if you get an allocation, buy it. This is a 10 out of 10 car. Say for me, the Gen 1, I never really gelled with it. My main complaint was the numb steering. And I used to say to my partner all the time, because obviously my partner, she really liked it. I used to say, you know what, my Evo was better. My Evo was a better car, and that was older. And for reference, I had an Evo 10 FQ360, and I've driven several Evo 9s FQs as well. And I used to say to her, I was like, yeah, the Yaris is good, you know, but my Evo was better. I definitely thought my Evo was better to drive. And I mean, what I'm saying by that is the way it felt to drive and the way it handled, blah, 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 blah. Not obviously like mod cons and stuff, though the Evo 10 was actually pretty good. It had a Rockford Fosgate sound system in it as standard. So yeah, I used to say, and but obviously for Bryony, the GR Yaris was really one of the first cars she drove, so she was really spoiled that one of her very first cars was to drive around in a Gen 1 GR Yaris. So yeah, she loved it. But you know, I'm 45, I've had too many cars, and I've driven hundreds of cars, so I've had a lot of experience of different stuff, and there are certain things I look for in a car. I really crave steering feel in a car, and I like a car to feel planted and with me. I always want a car that if I do something silly, like if I chuck it in a roundabout, I know how it's going to react, and that's how it does react. Kind of like go-karting. Go-karts only do what you tell them to do, and that, whereas some cars don't always react how you expect them to react, aka Mustangs. That's why you see so many of them getting crashed. It's not because necessarily all the drivers are idiots, it's because the cars actually can react differently from one time to another. But let's not talk about Mustangs in this video. Let's talk about this. And Bryony, having now driven this quite a lot, she is in full agreement with me. She is like, oh my, it is so much better than the Gen 1. And she is like less of a petrol head than me, but even she can feel the differences, especially the steering. She is the same mindset as me. She's like, how have they done it? Why is the steering so much better? So there you go. You know, we are both in full agreement that the new Gen 2 GR Yaris is a big improvement over the older Gen 1 Yaris. For both of us, this car is a 10 out of 10 for what it is. Bryony still hasn't decided which is her favourite, the Alpine or the Yaris. I actually think she is preferring the Alpine. And I think a lot of that is, and I don't want to compare these two here, but if you're not a petrol head, to most punters, on the street. This is just a nice Yaris, you know, just a Yaris. I guess that's for why a lot of owners love it, because they like the whole wolf in sheep's clothing aspect of the Yaris. Like this car, especially on a B road, will pretty much destroy any other car. You know, the Gen 1 Yaris could keep up with supercars on a B road. The Gen 2 will keep up with them just as easily. In many cases, you're pushing them along or you're leaving them standing because you don't get upset by bumpy roads, and if the conditions are mixed, you're definitely leaving a supercar. But, you know, look at it. To the regular punter, it's a Yaris. You know, she's driven it a few times. Nobody makes comment about it. It's just what it is. Yeah, she's always getting people coming up to her when she's driving the Alpine like, "Ooh, what's that? Is it a Porsche?" And that. And when she tells them it's an Alpine, they normally have no idea what it is. So it creates a lot of interest. And I say, I'm going to do a full comparison of the two, side by side. Don't want to get into too much detail, but I think that Bryony's favourite is probably the Alpine. I think that mine, for a British B road, my favourite is the Yaris, for sure. But I think for the versatility of having a great road car and a great track car, then for me the Alpine will win it, because I can take that on any track day and hammer it all day on track. No better, and it's far quicker than any Yaris on a track, even a Gen 2. It's just so capable. And that's, I mean, everybody raves that the GR is a 1280 kilo car, and they've kept the weight of the Gen 2 the same as the Gen 1. Say lighter battery, lighter carpets, but then there's weight from new technologies in the car. Whereas the Alpine is only 1100 kilos, and it's rear-wheel drive, and it's got flappy paddles, and it's a DCT flappy paddle box. But we're digressing now. So yeah, the Yaris is a 10 out of 10. I went with a manual. The manual is much improved. The IMT is massively improved. Really impressed. 10 out of 10 car. I just want to thank you for staying tuned in, if you're still tuned in, to listening to me ramble on about a GR Yaris for about 45 minutes. It is a great car. As I say, I've been saying nearly 1,000 miles, but we've done about 800 miles in the car. We didn't go full RPM use until 630 miles, which is the official you're now run in. But the way I've run it in is like the first 300 miles, we took it very easy, probably revving for the first 100 miles, like revving it to about 3,000 RPM, 200 miles, 3,500 RPM, 300 miles, 4,000 RPM, and that 400 miles, like 4,000 RPM, 500 miles, 5,000 RPM, 600 miles, 6,000 RPM, and then 630 onwards, used the full 7,000. And that's how I've basically run the car in. So that is the GR Yaris, Gen 2, Mark 2, 2024. It is amazing. It is a big improvement on the Gen 1. Any Gen 1 owners, if you did upgrade, you will absolutely love it. Anybody else who's never owned a Yaris and is contemplating one, do it. Yes, it's not a BMW or an Audi inside, but BMW and Audi don't have a car that drives like this. Yes, you can get a BMW X Drive or four-wheel drive, but it's nothing like this. This has got two mechanical diffs at either end of the car. Really, the driving sensations that you get from this Gen 2 are amazing. I say the feel from the car is, for me, the biggest area of improvement for the Gen 2. They've engineered so much more feel into the Gen 2. So for me, I used to dislike the Gen 1 because I said it was numb. For me, Gen 1 Yaris, extremely capable, very fast, great ability, but for me it was a numb car, and that's why I fell out of love with it. The Gen 2 isn't numb. The Gen 2 has tons more feel in the steering, way more confident inspiring in the chassis. Yeah, that is the big improvement. The Gen 2, it's hard to put across on words, but the Gen 2 is a much better driving experience. So yeah, I've bumbled on for far too long. As always, thank you for watching. Please do give me a like, it really counts. I'm over 1,000 subscribers now. I am going to start putting a bit of money into making these videos a bit more. So I've got myself a gimbal, probably going to get myself some professional mics to further improve the quality, especially when I'm in front of the camera. and I'll probably get some other stuff as well to help with that. We've got a GoPro as well, which I say there's a point of view video up on the channel, so please go and watch that. And yeah, just please like and subscribe to the channel, and anybody who has sat this entire video out, while I give you a massive thumbs up, because I know I go on a bit, but I do this, I guess the way you could word this is I do it in a one-take fashion. I literally come out with my camera and I start recording and I start rambling, and the words are just flowing. So I'm just telling you as it comes to my mind. You know, I try to remember what I need to mention, but yeah, it's just as it comes to mind. But Gen 2 GR Yaris, it is bloody brilliant. Go out and buy one. Ladies and gentlemen, go out and buy one. Cracking car. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.